we've got a whole mega mix of types of organization represented here. We've seen the president of Indiana University, Pamela Whitten, on stage, entrepreneurs, of course, and later this morning we're going to hear from some of the world's leading foundations about how they're deploying capital and connections to make a difference as well. By the way, a very quick plug for a session after lunch. We've got a showcase of the Entrepreneurship World Cup, and we'll be meeting 10 entrepreneurs on this stage who will get, I think, about 3 minutes each, so certainly not long, to pitch their company in front of our panel of judges. So today, I think, is a little bit like a movie where you see the big picture shot and then you get to zoom in as well. And that's what we're going to do now, because in one sense, we're zooming in on a part of the world, on Indiana, and yet, because we're going to be talking about Indiana being at the forefront of the semiconductor industry, we are talking about an industry that is shaping the world. Our two guests are incredibly well qualified to be in a conversation about this. Let me introduce you to the president and CEO of Purdue Research Foundation, and also the dean of the College of Engineering at Purdue University. Please give a warm GEC welcome to Dr. Arvind Raman and Chad Pittman. Thank you. Welcome, Chad. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining myself and Arvind, the Dean of Engineering. We're going to talk about semiconductors. So Arvind, with IMEC, with TSMC, with MediaTek, with Microsoft, and the recent announcement with SK Hynix, what are you excited about? Was this just an overnight success, or is this something long time in the making?
Well, thank you, Chad. It's great to be here with all of you. Really exciting to see all of you here. Excited to speak today, of course, about how we're trying to grow the beating heart of the Silicon Heartland right here in Indiana, in America's Heart Tech corridor, bookended at both ends by Purdue's main campus in West Lafayette and in Indianapolis. What I'm really excited about the spate of these new announcements, Chad, is that there's a reason why it's happening here. And the reason goes back, the long arc of history is really long. But if you go back to the inventors of the transistor, so John Bardeen was the inventor of the transistor, and in his memoirs, he brings up that some of the fundamental work that led to the invention of the transistor was actually done during the Second World War at Purdue University in silicon and germanium. And then 15 years after the end of the Second World War, the first MOSFET was actually tested. And even that was carried out by John Atala, who was a Purdue Boilermaker engineer. The MOSFET, in case you're not aware of it, is today the most commonly reproduced kind of transistor on the planet. 10 to the power 23 copies of MOSFETs have been made. In other words, it's the most replicated engineered object in the world, and invented by a Boilermaker engineer, of course. And so to some extent, when you look back at that long history, 80 years since the end of the Second World War, 65 years since the MOSFET was launched, here we are. This industry is coming back to where it all started, here in Indiana. So really super excited about that, of course. Also really excited because this is happening in a place which is really a sweet spot for Purdue University, Purdue Engineering, large amounts of research centers, large amounts of talent being produced at scale, tech talent being produced at scale. So it's really exciting from that point of view. And really the opportunity presented in the future is tremendous. If you look at the CHIPS Act, the incentives part of the CHIPS Act overall, the net new investments made have been in 7 regions in the country. Of those 7 regions, 5 are regions that already existed: Texas, California, Arizona, upstate New York, Oregon. The only net new regions in the country where new semiconductor incentives funds have been placed are here in the Midwest, Indiana and Ohio. And we're going faster in Indiana, aren't we?
We are.
So I think when you think about this momentous opportunity that exists, I think those of us who've been working in semiconductors for a long time, I work on the mechanics side of semiconductors, metrology, et cetera. We wouldn't have ever imagined such a moment would exist that in our own backyard, we'd be able to grow a new semiconductor ecosystem. So I'm really excited for all those reasons. Chad, how about you? You've been very deeply involved in this yourself.
Yeah, it is exciting. And long before I was involved in Purdue, obviously, a lot of things happened. And if you look at where we are today, going back to the early days of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation and around the 2004, 2005, 6, the state made a co-investment with Purdue and others in a thing called the Burke Nanotechnology Center. And I remember the first time Vic Lechtenberg, who was been retired for a time, but his contributions with universities was my introduction to semiconductors at Purdue. Then you had Victor Smith, who came along as Secretary of Commerce, who had spent a good chunk of his career in semiconductor industry in California. Ian Steff, who came along to the IADC in around the 2013, 2014 timeframe and said, hey, we're gonna be competitive in this space. And over time, a decade later, these things started coming together to have these series of successes where I think positions us as a state and as a region to be on the cutting edge of many things, including AI. With SK Hynix, with again MediaTek and these companies that are starting to set roots up in Lafayette and Indianapolis and around the state, Crane, and all over the place in Indiana and in the Midwest. So I had the chance to travel globally recently to East Asia, and generally the East Asians are very measured about committing to do things. But we would have meetings. Mung and I were in Japan meeting, and then within less than a month, companies are showing up at our doorsteps to explore what's going on in Indiana. So, extremely excited. Where do we go from here, Marvin? How do we capitalize on this in West Lafayette, Purdue, and broader Indiana?
Well, I'd like to maybe, kind of speak to the point you raised here, Chad, about these new companies, investments happening in Indiana. It's more than the magnitude of the investment, the billions of dollars that are coming in. If you really think about it, it's also the kind of technology that's coming into the state. Take for example, SK Hynix. What SK Hynix is going to be bringing to our state is a critical advanced technology for us from 2 points of view. It's going to be about advanced packaging. Advanced packaging arguably is one of the most important value-add components in semiconductors for the next coming decade. So this advanced technology is coming to Indiana. A second key part of this technology is that it's about AI chips. SK Hynix is going to be producing high bandwidth memory, and this is absolutely essential to all the AI chips being produced in the country right now. So by having SK here, what it has done is really brought a very critical part of the national supply chain of semiconductors into the state, into right here in Indiana. So as you think about it, it's cutting edge technology that's coming in. This is not just old technology that we are doing a lot of production on, it's cutting edge technology. You spoke to MediaTek, you spoke to IMEC. All of these companies are playing at the cutting edge, new advanced technology. So when I look to these companies coming in, they're all working on cutting edge of critical technology that our nation needs. And look at the strengths of Purdue right there. Speaking of the strengths of Purdue, as the Dean of Engineering, I got to brag a little bit, Chad, I hope you don't mind. We are, this year, going to become the largest producer of bachelor's degrees in engineering in the country. Purdue University is. We are already the largest producer of STEM talents, in the country. So really excited about that. And if you think about it, a lot of other universities over the last 10, 15 years have been focusing on growth of computing and computer science and had forgotten about the hardware side of things a lot. Not at Purdue. We kept firm with a focus and having that focus on semiconductors even as we grew the computing side of things. And that allowed us to be in a very unique position when all this came together. We have the deepest bench of semiconductor research expertise in the country. We have the nation's largest semiconductor research facility at any university in the country, at Purdue University, the Burke Nanotechnology Center. We invested tens of millions of dollars in upgrading it precisely to be able to absorb these new companies that came on board. Oh, and by the way, even before the CHIPS Act was announced, we announced the nation's leading semiconductor workforce development program. This is the comprehensive semiconductor degrees program in the country. We have more than 1,000 engineering students, more than 1,000 right now, doing semiconductor-specific credentials. This involves rising sophomores who are 19 years old, Chad, students who are teenagers who are designing chips all the way to tape out and getting chips made, 19 years old. We start them early, right? We start them early at Purdue. So, all this is a fertile ground for really doing something big. And I think all the entrepreneurs, all the investors in the audience should really be thinking ahead about how to plug into this ecosystem. If you look at the semiconductor ecosystem, traditionally it's been chip design is where a lot of startup companies take root, and there's hundreds of them in Silicon Valley, for example. But I think in the Purdue ecosystem, it's going to be more than that. I think there's going to be startup companies in the new materials for semiconductor space. There's going to be startup companies in the new processes, in digital twins, in the use of artificial intelligence to improve the design cycle of semiconductor manufacturing and design. So I think it's a really exciting space. But again, you know a lot about this. The PRF, Purdue Research Foundation, is in fact responsible for managing the entire intellectual property assets of Purdue University. What's your take on this?
So where I've seen the people have the most successes when they come visit, they establish roots, they move with their families, and they work across the street with the academics and the students who are driving that research and helping steer the applications of what those innovations can mean. We would like to invite everybody in this room up to Purdue, come to our mixers, come to visit us, and meet the other innovators up there. I think what's super exciting about this AI revolution is the applications that all this hard tech innovation can lead to. I happened to have a chance to have coffee with Team Goody, who's the CEO of TechPoint last week, and she was sharing with me the work that they're doing in helping do an AI literacy for people like myself who are lawyers and business people. And so we can take those innovations and then really make those impact on humankind. But establishing roots, coming and visiting, I think is the best way for those ideas to take root. Last word.
Oh, no, I'd like to say this is not a bubble. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to come to Indiana to be a part of something entirely new that hasn't existed for 80 years. How many times are we going to have the chance to do this? So with that, I'd like to really thank all of you for being here to spread the word on this incredible new frontier that we are opening together here in the heart of Indiana.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boiler up.
Boiler up indeed.